I'll go and I'll order a cab at once, gasped Uncle Andrew. Stop, said the witch, just as he reached the door. Do not dream of such treachery. My eyes can see through the walls and into the minds of men. They will be on you wherever you go. At the first sign of disobedience, I will lay such spells on you that anything you sit down on will feel like a red-hot iron, and whenever you lie in a bed, there will be invisible blocks of ice at your feet. Now go. The old man went out, looking like a dog with its tails between its legs. The children were now afraid that Jadis would have something to say to them about what had happened in the wood. As it turned out, however, she never mentioned it either then or afterwards. I think, and Diggory thinks so too, that her mind was a sort which cannot remember the quiet place at all, and however often you took her there, and however long you left her there, she would still know nothing about it. Now that she was left alone with the children, she took no notice of them either. And that was like her too. In charm, she had taken no notice of Polly, because Diggory was the one she had wanted to make use of. Now that she had Uncle Andrew, she took no notice of Diggory. I expect most witches are like that. They are not interested in things or people unless they can use them. They are terribly practical. There was silence in the room for a minute or two, but you could tell by the way Jadis tapped her foot on the floor that she was growing impatient. Presently she said, as if to herself, "What is the old fool doing? I should have brought a whip." She stalked out of the room in pursuit of Uncle Andrew, without one glance at the children. "Whew," said Polly, letting a long breath of relief. "And now I must get home. It's frightfully late. I shall catch it." "Well, do come back as soon as you can," said Diggory. "This is simply ghastly having her here. We must make some sort of plan." "That's up to your uncle now," said Polly. "It was he who started all this messing about with magic. All the same, you will come back, won't you? Hang it all, you can't leave me alone in this scrape like this." "I shall go home by the tunnel," said Polly rather coldly. "That will be quickest. And if you want to come back, hadn't you better say we're sorry?" "Sorry!" exclaimed Diggory. "Well now, isn't that just like a girl? What have I done?" "Oh, nothing, of course," said Polly sarcastically. "Only nearly screwed my wrist off with that room with the waxworks like a cowardly bully. Only struck the bell with a hammer like a silly idiot. Only turned back in the wood so that she had time to catch hold of you before we jumped into our own pool. That's all." "Oh," said Diggory, very surprised. "Well, all right. I'll say I'm sorry, and I really am sorry about what happened in the waxworks room too. There, I've said I'm sorry. And now, do be decent and come back. I shall be in a frightful hole if you don't." "I don't see what's going to happen to you. It's Mr. Ketterley who's going to sit in a red-hot chair and have ice in his bed, isn't it?" "It isn't that sort of thing," said Diggory. "Well, I'm bothered about his mother. Suppose that creature went into her room. She might frighten her to death." Oh, I see," said Polly in a rather different voice. "Well, all right. We'll call it Pax. I'll come back if I can, but I must go now." And she crawled through the little door into the tunnel. In the dark place among the rafters, which had seemed so exciting and adventurous just a few hours ago, seemed quite tame and homely now. We must now go back to Uncle Andrew. His poor heart went pit-a-pat as he staggered down the attic stairs, and he kept on dabbing at his forehead with a handkerchief. When he reached the bedroom, which was the floor below, he locked himself in, and the very first thing he did was grope his wardrobe for a bottle and a wine-glass, which he always kept hidden there, where Aunt Letty could not find them. He poured himself a glassful of something nasty, some grown-up drink, and drank it in one gulp. Then he drew a deep breath. "Upon my word," he said to himself, "I'm dreadfully shaking. Most upsetting. And at this time of my life." He poured out a second glass and drank it too, and then he began to change his clothes. You have never seen such clothes as I can remember. He put on a very high, shiny, stiff sort of collar that made you hold up your chin all the time. Then he put on a white waistcoat with a pattern on it and arranged his gold watch chain across the front. He put on his best frock coat and the one he was keeping for weddings and funerals. He got out his best tall hat and polished it up. There was a vase of flowers on his dressing table. He took one and put it in his buttonhole. Then he took a clean handkerchief, a lovely one that you couldn't buy today, out of a little left-handed drawer and put a few drops of scent in it. He took his eyeglass, the one with the thick black ribbon, and screwed it into his eye. Then he looked at himself in the mirror. Children have one kind of silliness, as you know, and grown-ups have another. At this moment, Uncle Andrew was beginning to be silly in a very grown-up way. Now that the witch was no longer in the same room with him, he was quickly forgetting how frightful she is and thinking more and more of her as a wonderful beauty. He kept on saying to himself, "A fine woman, sir, a fine, fine woman, a superb creature." And he had somehow managed to forget that it was the children who had gotten hold of the superb creature. He felt as if himself, by his magic, had called her out of an unknown world. "Andrew, my boy," he said to himself as he looked into the glass, "you're a devilish well-preserved fellow for your age. A distinguished-looking man, sir." You see, the foolishness of old man was actually beginning to imagine that the witch would fall in love with him. The 2 drinks probably had something to do with it, and so had his best clothes. But he was, in any case, as vain as a peacock. That was why he had become a magician. He unlocked the door, went downstairs, and sent the housemaid out to fetch a hansom and looked into the drawing room. There, as he expected, he found Aunt Letty. She was busily mending a mattress. It lay on the floor near the window, and she was kneeling on it. "Ah, Letty, my dear," said Uncle Andrew, I have to go out. Just lend me £5 or so. That's a good gal." "No, Andrew, dear," said Letty in her firm, quiet voice, without looking up from her work. "I told you times without number that I will not lend you any money." "Now, pray don't be troublesome, my dear," said Uncle Andrew. "It's most important. You will put me in an awkward position if you don't." "Andrew," said Aunt Letty, looking him straight in the face, "I wonder you are not ashamed to ask me for money." There was a long, dull story of a grown-up kind behind these words. All you need to know about that is that Uncle Andrew, what with his managing dear Letty's business matters for her, and never doing any of the work, and running up large bills for brandy and cigars, which Aunt Letty had paid again and again, had made her a good deal poorer than she had been 30 years ago. "My dear gal," said Uncle Andrew, "you don't understand. I shall have some quite unexpected expenses today. I have to do a little entertaining. Now, come now, don't be tiresome." "And pray, who are you going to entertain, Andrew?" asked Aunt Letty. "A most distinguished visitor has just arrived." "Distinguished fiddlestick," said Aunt Letty. "There hasn't been a ring at the bell for the last hour." At that moment, the door suddenly flung open. Aunt Letty looked around and saw with amazement an enormous woman, splendidly dressed, with bare arms and flashing eyes, stood in the doorway. It was the witch.